Shifting focus for now, Malaysian Airlines flight MH370's disappearance remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. And now, almost 11 years after a British company was launched, what is likely to be the final stage?
If it isn't a Boeing 777, if it isn't MH370, it begs the question, surely someone would have noticed a bit of plane this size in a crash or, fallen off a plane or whatever it is. Is that not the case?
It began as just another piece of metal, rusted, forgotten, left to the waves. But after 11 years of silence, scientists finally took a closer look inside a fragment of MH370.
Flight MH370 from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. The days, weeks, and months that followed have been a period of torment and anguish.
What they found wasn't just wreckage. It was evidence. Chilling, undeniable, and far from what anyone expected. This isn't some wild theory or guesswork. It's real. It's been confirmed. Even Jesse Waters said it's one of the most disturbing aviation discoveries ever. Could this be the key to the world's most haunting flight mystery? Join us as we uncover what was found inside MH370 and why it's shaking everyone. The vanishing of MH370. It started as a normal flight. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur just after midnight. It was headed for Beijing. On board were 239 people, families, couples, children, and crew. None of them knew they were about to become part of one of the world's greatest mysteries. Less than an hour after takeoff, the plane crossed into Vietnamese airspace, and then it vanished. No distress call, no emergency signal. The transponder, which helps track the aircraft, was turned off. From that moment, MH370 disappeared from official air traffic records. Confusion quickly spread. Vietnamese air traffic controllers were waiting for the plane to check in. It never did. At the same time, Malaysian authorities hesitated. Hours passed before they realized something was wrong.
More than 72 hours have passed, but still no sign of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370.
By then, it was already too late. The search had begun, but it started in the wrong place. What will happen next? Keep watching to find out. Everyone first thought the plane had gone down in the South China Sea. Search teams were sent there. The media arrived. Families were gathered into waiting rooms. Airline officials gave calm but vague statements. But behind closed doors, there was growing panic. Then came something even stranger. Military radar data leaked to the public showed that MH370 had made a sudden U-turn. It flew back across Malaysia, then northwest over the Strait of Malacca. It kept flying for hours, without communication, without its transponder. It became a ghost in the sky. People began asking questions. Who was flying the plane? Was it hijacked? Was the pilot in control? Or was someone else? Theories started flooding in. Some blamed terrorism. Others thought it was a case of pilot suicide. Some believed the plane had mechanical problems. But one thing stood out. This didn't look like an accident. It looked intentional. Then came the satellite data. A company called Inmarsat released information that showed MH370 had been handshaking with satellites for hours after radar contact was lost. These signals placed the plane deep in the southern Indian Ocean. That area is one of the most remote places on Earth. Some call it Earth's final blind spot. The search moved to this vast ocean. Dozens of countries joined in. Billions of dollars were spent. Advanced sonar equipment was used, but months passed, then years.
Sonar, sound navigation and ranging, is a device which is used to detect any object or animal in water.
And nothing was found. No wreckage, no black box, no bodies, just silence. It became the most expensive search in aviation history, but it brought no answers, only more questions. Then, in July 2015, something finally changed. A part of the plane's wing called a flaperon was found on Reunion Island, east of Madagascar. Tests confirmed it was from MH370. Over the next few years, more debris turned up. Pieces of the interior cabin, a horizontal stabilizer, even part of a suitcase. Most of these were found on beaches in Madagascar and other parts of eastern Africa. Each time a new piece was found, hope sparked again. Investigators studied each item carefully, but none of them gave the full story. None could explain what had happened in the sky that night.
And all of us would like to know what actually happens on the ill-fated flight MES Boeing 777 flight number MH370.
Meanwhile, the families were still waiting. Time did not heal their pain. It only made it worse. Official reports came out, but they gave little closure. Some suggested the pilot was stressed. Others believed the plane flew on autopilot until it ran out of fuel. But nothing was ever confirmed. The final official report was released in 2018. It ended with a line that frustrated many. The possibility of intervention cannot be ruled out. That was it. No names, no clear cause, just mystery. Now, 11 years later, the silence is finally cracking. Independent researchers have kept going. They've tracked ocean currents. They've recreated flight paths. They've studied every bit of debris ever found. And slowly, they're uncovering new clues. But what new clues will they discover? Stay tuned to find out what the ocean finally revealed about MH370. In the early days after MH370 disappeared, the ocean gave nothing back. Teams from around the world searched with high-tech tools, sonar, satellites, underwater robots. But the Indian Ocean, wide and deep, stayed quiet. It was like the plane had slipped into another world. Then, in July 2015, something changed. A beachcomber on Réunion Island, a small French territory east of Madagascar, stumbled upon a strange piece of debris. It looked like part of a plane wing. Experts soon confirmed it. It was a flaperon from MH370. Finally, there was proof. The plane hadn't just disappeared, it had crashed. But the part didn't offer many clues. It was beaten by the sea and weathered by time. Still, it was a start. After that, the ocean began to whisper louder. More pieces of the plane started washing ashore. A wing flap turned up in Tanzania. Cabin panels, window trims, seat cushions, and even parts of a suitcase were found along the coasts of Madagascar and Mozambique. Some were confirmed to be from MH370. Others were very likely. Each piece was torn, broken, and faded, but each one had a story to tell, if only someone could read it. As the official search wound down in 2017, others stepped in. These were independent investigators, not tied to governments or airlines. They searched because they cared. One of the most determined was Blaine Gibson, a lawyer who had no background in aviation but was driven by curiosity and compassion. He traveled to remote villages in Madagascar and Mozambique.
Blaine Gibson has been on a personal hunt for wreckage from MH370 for a year and a half. He scoured the African and Madagascar coastlines,
Asking questions, talking to locals, and collecting debris. He sent photos to experts around the world. Some of the debris looked odd. One cabin panel had marks that looked like burns. Was it from fire, chemicals, or just damage from the ocean? Nobody knew for sure. But as more pieces appeared, strange patterns were noticed. The way some parts broke didn't match what you'd expect from a soft water landing. The damage was too sharp, too rough, too violent. Meanwhile, oceanographers studied the currents. They created models to track how debris could float for months or years and end up thousands of miles from the crash site. These models pointed to a stretch of the Indian Ocean that had long been suspected but never fully searched. Somewhere in that silent, remote zone, the rest of MH370 still lies, waiting. But not everyone was focused on where the plane ended. Some wanted to know how it ended and why. At first, many thought of technical problems, electrical failure, loss of oxygen, or a simple autopilot flight until the fuel ran out. But those theories began to fall apart. They couldn't explain the turnback, the lack of communication, the 6-hour ghost flight across the ocean. That's when people started looking at the human element. Could the pilot have taken the plane off course on purpose? Was it a planned act? If so, why? There were no clear answers, no signs of a motive, no goodbye messages, nothing. But then came one more piece of the puzzle, and it changed everything. It was a part of the plane's landing gear. It didn't just fall off, it was ripped from the inside, twisted and pierced, but not by impact with the ocean floor. The damage came from inside the plane, and that was deeply disturbing. It suggested that something violent happened in those final moments, something intentional. This wasn't just debris, it was a message, not in words or numbers, but in metal. The landing gear component hinted at deliberate action. Someone may have lowered the gear during the flight's final moments. If the plane hit the water with the landing gear down, it would have broken apart more violently. That's not standard procedure. It makes no sense unless someone wanted the plane to shatter. It raised new questions. Was this done to hide the crash? To leave no trace? Was it a final act by someone in control of the cockpit? We may never know for sure, but the ocean remembers. Slowly, it has given up the bones of MH370, twisted, scarred, silent pieces that speak of impact, pressure, fire, and intent. Each one helps fill in the picture. And now, with the discovery of the landing gear part, that picture has taken a darker shape. Something went terribly wrong on that flight. Not by chance, not by failure, but possibly by choice. In the midst of it all, one man refused to let go and was bent on finding out what exactly happened to MH370. Who is this man? Let's find out. The man who wouldn't let go, Blaine Gibson and the hunt for MH370. When most people moved on from the mystery of MH370, one man didn't. His name is Blaine Gibson. He wasn't related to anyone on that flight. He wasn't hired by any airline or government. He was just someone who couldn't forget the questions that the world had left behind. How does a huge plane like a Boeing 777 vanish without a trace in today's world? Blaine Gibson was a former lawyer. He loved to travel. He enjoyed puzzles. But MH370 wasn't just a puzzle to him, it became something much deeper. While the official search for the plane slowed down and eventually stopped, Gibson did the opposite. He grabbed maps, followed ocean drift models, and flew to some of the most remote places on Earth. He went to Madagascar, Mozambique, and other quiet beaches far from the public eye. These were places where GPS was often useless, and locals lived simple lives by the sea. And there, on those beaches, Gibson started to find things. Small, broken pieces of something much bigger. Pieces the ocean had held onto for years, only to spit out slowly, one by one. But Gibson didn't work alone for long. He teamed up with Richard Godfrey, a British aerospace engineer who shared the same drive. Godfrey had a different set of tools. He didn't walk beaches, but he knew data. He knew radio signals, satellite tracking, and aviation systems inside out. Where Gibson had grit, Godfrey brought science. Godfrey came up with something new. He started using a method called WSPR, Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. It's a way to track how a plane might affect global radio signals, even if it isn't talking to anyone. Using this, he tried to trace MH370's path across the sky based on the tiny waves it may have disrupted. It was a strange idea, but it started to make sense. The path he mapped lined up with the locations where debris had been found. Still, the official investigators didn't fully buy it. They stayed quiet, unsure. But Gibson and Godfrey kept working. Local fishermen would bring Gibson strange pieces caught in nets or found on beaches. Each time he photographed the debris and sent it to experts. Some of it was confirmed to be from a Boeing 777. Other parts were likely from MH370.
The wreckage does resemble wing parts from a Boeing 777, the type of aircraft that was operating MH370.
And then, one day, Gibson found something that changed everything. It was found in Madagascar, a heavy, twisted piece of metal. At first, it looked like just another broken part. But when experts saw it, they realized it was the trunnion door, a part of the plane's landing gear. That was important, but what really mattered was the damage. This part wasn't torn from the outside. It was pierced from the inside out. That shocked everyone. Why would there be damage coming from inside the plane? Some experts thought maybe parts of the engine exploded and hit it. Others believed something worse. They thought someone intentionally lowered the landing gear during a fast dive toward the sea. That matters because pilots are trained not to do that in a water landing. Keeping the gear up helps the plane stay in one piece when it hits water. Dropping it guarantees a hard, deadly breakup. In other words, someone may have wanted the plane to break apart on impact. That's not a mistake. That's intentional. Gibson and Godfrey didn't just have a theory anymore. They had evidence that hinted at something dark, maybe even sabotage. They didn't know for sure who or why, but the clues were growing. And the official silence only made the mystery deeper. That single piece, the trunnion door, told a story. A story written in bent metal and strange holes. When a fisherman handed it to Blaine Gibson, he probably thought it was just another scrap. But it wasn't. It might be the most important clue in the whole MH370 mystery. But what was this clue? Keep watching to find out. MH370, a clue too hard to ignore. At first, it looked like just another piece of broken plane, a jagged bit of metal, sun-bleached and twisted, found on a beach far from anywhere. But when British engineer Richard Godfrey looked closer, something clicked. The shape, the holes, the way it was built, this wasn't from a wing or the cabin wall. It was something more important. It was a trunnion door, part of the plane's landing gear system, and it was damaged in a way no one expected. The trunnion door had not just been bent or worn down by time. It had been punctured from the inside out. That kind of damage was a red flag. It suggested something had exploded or broken loose inside the aircraft during its final moments. The marks weren't just scratches. They were sharp, violent tears, with the metal pushed outward, as if something had hit it from inside the plane. Godfrey, working with Blaine Gibson, the man who had spent years searching for MH370's debris, dug deeper. The damage didn't match a soft ocean crash. It pointed to something much more aggressive: engine disintegration at the moment of impact. In other words, parts of the plane's own engine may have come apart and slammed into the landing gear door from the inside during a high-speed dive. That would already be disturbing. But there was something even more chilling. According to aviation rules, pilots should never lower the landing gear during a water landing. Keeping the gear up gives the plane a better chance of floating or at least staying in one piece. Dropping the landing gear turns it into a battering ram, increasing the chance the plane will break apart the moment it hits water. So, if the gear was down, it likely wasn't an accident. It was intentional. That made the trunnion door more than a clue. It became evidence of human action, not mechanical failure. Someone chose to lower that landing gear. And if that was true, then maybe the entire flight was brought down on purpose. Godfrey and Gibson didn't keep this to themselves. They included their findings in a report that made even experienced aviation experts pause. The report suggested that MH370 didn't glide into the sea. It didn't ditch gently. Instead, it dived nose first, fast and hard, with the engines possibly falling apart in the final seconds. And it didn't happen by chance. Then came something even more shocking. Insiders revealed that new footage had been found, real satellite and thermal scans taken years ago but never made public. This time, the focus wasn't on the ocean. It was on a dense, wild jungle. The images showed a patch of land where something wasn't right. The trees were flattened. The ground was exposed. And in the middle of it all was a shadow, faint but clear, the outline of a large aircraft partly buried and forgotten. This jungle area hadn't been searched before, but when compared with ocean drift models, the same ones Gibson had used to trace where debris might wash up, the location actually made sense. It lined up. This raised a huge question. What if MH370 didn't crash into the sea at all? What if it was steered to land or crash in a remote jungle, hidden from the world? That changed the story entirely. The new idea wasn't just about a crash, it was about a message, something deliberate, maybe personal, maybe political, maybe even both.
What is confirmed belong to MH370. That means we have to study how the accident happened, how actually whether it is a ditch into the sea.
No one knows what the message was, but the signs all pointed in the same direction. The lowered gear, the inward damage, the off-course flight path. It didn't feel random anymore. It felt planned. And the person many began looking at again was the pilot, Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. Zahari had been cleared in the official report. He was seen as a quiet, experienced man, but his personal life raised questions. Some reports said he was going through a separation. Others mentioned he was unhappy with the political situation in Malaysia. On top of that, his home flight simulator had strange data. It showed simulated routes that went deep into the southern Indian Ocean, eerily close to MH370's final path. At the time, authorities brushed it off. But with the new damage evidence and satellite images, people began to look at it differently. There was still no solid proof, no clear motive, but everything began to point toward intent, cutting communication, turning off the transponder, flying silently for hours, dropping the landing gear, crashing far from anywhere. These weren't random mistakes. They looked like pieces of a puzzle, a plan to disappear completely. The hardest part is that no one can say exactly why. Was it revenge, a political message, or something deeply personal? We may never know. But thanks to Godfrey and Gibson, and a single piece of broken metal, the story of MH370 has changed. It's no longer just a mystery about where the plane went. It's becoming a story about what someone may have done, and how they almost got away with it. Do you think the debris found has solved the mystery of the missing MH370? Let us know your opinions in the comment section below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click on the next video displayed on your screen. You will enjoy it.